Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. Welcome everyone to another episode of True Story Live. Excited to be here on a Sunday, and I hope you're excited to be listening. Tonight's topic is For the Life of Me, Part 2, Risk versus Regret, Path Through the Mountains. Very excited about this one. I was talking to Nez and Jen before the broadcast, and I was saying that I have a lot to say about regret. So I'll save some for the show, but this is going to be a good broadcast with a lot of discussion. The challenge will be to fit it into the 2 hours because there's a lot of questions on this one. Sometimes when Glenn does a write-up, he'll, kind of leave it open and I pull some things out of a lot of monologue, which is not a problem. I've been doing this for a while. It's a fun challenge. But tonight, there's the challenge will be to fit it all into the 2 hours. It's a lot of conversation that could come out of these questions. So stay tuned for that. First, as usual, we will introduce the panel for those listening for the first time. If you are listening for the first time, thank you for stopping by. We're glad that you're here. Hope that you are enjoying your Sunday evening, and we hope we make it more enjoyable by this little broadcast of ours. Thank you for coming. All right. I am Jason, and I'm the host of the broadcast. And with me, I have three wonderful people that out of their busy Sunday, they show up every time, and I'm delighted to have them. And we'll start with Nez tonight. Nez, Marisa of the Nez Lover channel, and we'll talk a little bit more about her channel. Make sure you're aware that it's out there in just a few minutes. But Marisa, say hello to the peoples for me, please.
Hello to the peoples. Hey, it's been a wonderful, beautiful day here in Ohio. Had a cookout with one of my neighbors. That was fun. I hope everybody's having a safe and happy Memorial Day weekend. Thank you, everybody who is coming to watch and listen and lurk. And thank you, everybody who catches the replay. And if you could take a moment, please share the stream out on your social media if you're so inclined. And I'll be taking a moment to share a few links throughout the stream. And if you don't want your link shared, please tell us. And if you do want your link shared, please also let us know in the chat. That's about it on that. And I'm looking forward to jumping in and getting hip deep in this conversation. Got lots to talk about. Woo!
I love it. Before we get to the other two panel members, I just want to say, if you have not visited Nez Lover's channel, please do yourself a favor and go by there, especially for the episode last night. She did a retrospective or tribute show to Tina Turner, and she drew a wonderful art of her from the Mad Max. I think it might have been number 3, but it was Thunderdome. That one of my favorite movies of all time. It turned out wonderful, and my wonderful wife, who I'll introduce next, she did an owl, a beautiful, very detailed owl. So between the two of them, if you're into art, there's a lot to be seen. And also, if you like Tina Turner and are saddened by her recent death, just like I am, then you can shed some tears and watch some beautiful art if you're so inclined. All right. And Nez will share the link to her channel at some point, as she said, and make sure everyone has access to it. All right. Jen, my wonderful, amazing wife, is having a great day. She has great days all the time, so this is not much different. But Jen, take a minute to say hello to the people, please.
Hello, peoples. It is always, always, always a pleasure to be here with all of you, the panel members, people in the chat. And I'm just very grateful today, grateful for life and grateful for these discussions and all the things that we talk about and share and discuss and learn and grow with. It's wonderful. So glad to be here. Glad to be here.
It's a great word, grateful. It's kind of similar to gratitude. And speaking of gratitude, we have, last but not least, our friend from Australia, Glenn, who has said a lot about gratitude. And as I've mentioned in the past, for those of you who listen to the episodes, It's meant a lot to me, and I've taken it on board, so to speak, and I think it makes a huge difference. So, speaking of difference, let's hear from Glenn and say hello to the peoples, if you would, Glenn.
Yeah, hi everyone. Yep, Tina Turner now. Almost 30 years ago, she sang Simply the Best at the football grand final here in Australia, and it's considered even today as the most iconic performance and advertisement in Australian sporting history.
Wow.
And it was amazing, brilliant, and I haven't seen any Mad Max sort of characters here, but some pretty close.
Right.
Down the street, probably about 1 minute walk.
For those of you that don't know, Mel Gibson is an Aussie.
Correct.
Of course, his accent is almost all gone now. He's been doing movies in America for so long. I think it washed it out a little bit. But in the old movies, you can tell he's got a little bit of that accent. And I'm not sure of this. I'd have to look, but I believe those three movies, a lot of them were filmed in Australia. I could be wrong.
I think so, and I think there's a lot of Australian actors in them.
Yeah,
In
there
fact, I
definitely
can
is.
remember there's some of our well-known actors were in them.
There definitely is. So I think that I'm right about that. I think it was filmed mostly in Australia. And one of the reasons I know is because the scene in where they're in the Thunderdome and the crowd is chanting "one man, two men enter, one man leaves." You can tell it's mostly Australians. It's the way it sounds. Anyway, I before we get going, so after the stream last night, the wonderful tribute to Tina Turner over on Nez Lover's channel, and I'd done this a little bit before, but this morning when I got up, I listened to the end of the broadcast because Jen and I had to spend our time together before I went to bed because usually we only have the one day together, which is today, and so Saturday night and today. But anyway, I didn't get a chance last night to hear the end of the broadcast where Nez did a rendition of the popular song "We Don't Need Another Hero" from the movie that we're discussing. And I was listening to that, and then it took me down a little rabbit hole of Tina Turner for a couple of hours. I watched a documentary on Ike and Tina Turner and watched a lot of videos and things like that. So it really sparked off a good remembrance for me of Tina
Okay,
Turner.
Crips, I looked it up. Where was it filmed? Just quickly.
Yeah.
It was filmed in Coober Pedy, which is it's out in the sticks.
Sure.
It's just that's right, and it's an opal mining town, but it's barren.
Oh, wow.
And it's so hot out there. A lot of times they live underground.
Yeah. Well, it works. It works for that movie for sure because it's a dead land pretty much.
Oh yeah, it's rough.
Yeah.
And it says that the Bartertown was in Homebush Bay in Sydney. Well, Homebush is like out where the Olympic Stadium was, I believe.
Wow.
But it's not that far out of Sydney. It's on the way for me to go to Sydney. It's on the way into Sydney, sort of thing.
Wow.
And it says the children's camp was in the Blue Mountains, which is about an hour and a little bit drive from where I live.
Wow. Excellent.
So we can take you there, not to Coober Pedy. That's a long drive.
It's a long drive.
It'd take days.
Yeah. Well, everyone in the chat seems to know a little bit about it too. They said that Melbourne, many of the car chase scenes were filmed near the town of Little River, northeast of Geelong. I'm probably saying it wrong. The early town scenes filmed in the main street of Clunes, north of Ballarat.
Ballarat?
Yeah.
Ballarat?
Yep.
Geelong.
Yeah, thank you. All right. So with all that out of the way, let's take a minute to say hello to anyone in the chat. Jen, if you would take a minute.
Sure, absolutely. Well, we had Dana pop in first, or if we were being technical, Nez. And then we had Celine come in. Hey, Celine. Hey, Dana. And let's see. Oh, everyone. Oh,
Yep.
Everyone. Awesome. Okay. I'm like
Everyone.
having a hard time. Like, hello, everyone.
Everyone.
That's kind of cool. And that's who we've got so far in the chat. Hey, everybody. Glad you guys are here.
It's a nice image. It looks kind of like an eyeball or a black hole. I don't know what that is, but it's beautiful, whatever it is. All right, so let's dig in. We're going to get started, and we will stop and say hello to anyone else new that comes in the chat, but we're very grateful that everyone is here right now. So thank you. All right, again, for the life of me, part 2, risk versus regret, path through the mountains. Welcome to part 2 of For the Life of Me. Many people, when they think of risk, view it via several common terms. Quote, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Quote, it's not worth the risk. Quote, risk versus reward being but a few. Our approach to risk can be viewed as either positive or negative, as each of us views the world from our own perspective. Tonight, we take another direction and substitute the word reward with regret. We'll examine if there is more to risk than meets the eye by looking at what criteria we use in such decision making. Our song this evening is Path Through the Mountains. As the composer says, this song is an expedition, an arduous journey through a beautiful but dangerous mountain pass. Link is in the description. We, the masses, are conditioned to believe that a risk is something to be taken, only if the payoff for taking the risk is greater than the risk itself. For example, a poker game where the odds are assessed and cards counted. It's clinical. Add to that another form of risk that is related to consequences. Example, if I drink water out of this pond, what will happen? Decidedly not clinical, but rather a value judgment. We tend to evaluate each of the above examples via the view of outcomes first and then work backward to decide, is this worth it? Rather than focus on the outcomes of risk-taking, this show focuses on the effects of not taking risks. How many times have we heard, quote, I wish I had done this. I regret not doing so, end quote. The Cambridge Dictionary definition of regret is, quote, a feeling of sadness about something sad or wrong or about a mistake that you have made and a wish that it could have been different and better, end quote. Nothing highlighted this more for me than the final days of my father's life. All I could think of was, quote, what a privilege to be here, to have done this for him, end quote. Perhaps this all relates to a conversation I had with him in those last days. The acknowledgement that there were no regrets, nothing remained unsaid, etc., was a very powerful experience. Please remember that this write-up is not about taking risks that can literally kill a person, but those things that can kill a person internally. I've been told that, in the eyes of some, the latter is probably worse. Regret is an arduous journey for sure. Maybe there is a clue here as to why some events have a sense of loss or gain attached. Yet with others, there's a sense of profundity about it all. It appears that regret can be a double-edged sword. When responding to the next set of questions, think of how you view the following, hopefully with examples. The questions. Regret for not saying what we think and feel. Regret for saying what we think and feel in a harsh and hurtful manner. Regret for not enacting out what we think and feel. Regret for acting out what we think and feel in a harsh and hurtful manner. Regret for not doing more due to fear of rejection, ridicule, or disappointment. Regret for shifting your fear of rejection, ridicule, or disappointment onto others. Regret for not acting out of love. Regret for saying we are acting out of love when we are doing the opposite. Wow. Regret for not acting today. Regret for finding an excuse not to act today. Not so easy, is it? I trust that thinking about some of the final questions for tonight will assist. Which is more difficult, the decision to take a risk or the risk itself? What is it that stops us from taking risks? What stops us from going in boots and all? In life, do we need to take a degree of risk for there to be no regrets? When taking risks, is it relevant to act from a place of humility rather than pride? Does the approach make a difference? Have you ever regretted not being your true self in a situation? And if so, what ongoing effect has that had upon you? Do you outwardly declare the, quote, real you, end quote, more today than you did, say, 5 years ago? Why is this so? All right, I'll read the last of it at the end. Okay, there we go. All right, well, a lot of questions to get through, so we'll hop into it. I'm just going to check the chat real quick and make sure no one new popped in. Doesn't look like anyone did, so we'll keep an eye on that. All right. So the quote, the Cambridge Dictionary definition of regret is a feeling of sadness about something sad or wrong, or about a mistake that you have made, and a wish that it could have been different and better. And then the instructions before the questions, it appears that regret can be a double-edged sword. When responding to the next set of questions, think of how you view the following, hopefully with examples. All right, first one, regret for not saying what we think and feel. Jen, you ever?
Wow.
Any examples? Right?
Yeah, I
before the
just
show,
was thinking about this.
right.
I was just thinking about this in regard to my family. And I know part of it is family dynamics and how my parents grew up and then how they taught us to grow up, when we were younger. But there's this regret that there wasn't more of an openness cultivated, like an openness to share feelings and to be direct, be honest, instead of stuffing feelings. It's interesting when you have families similar to mine, you start discovering things about each other later in life. And I think it's normal for there to be sort of this internal ache because with the sharing comes understanding. And there's sometimes a light bulb going off or empathy shared or regarding things about your siblings or your parents that you didn't know a long time ago. Yeah. And so then you have timelines, could be any length of time of, seeing your parents in a certain way or your siblings or having specific thoughts about them that could have been changed or adjusted if things had been openly shared. And so that kind of makes me sad. Like I still am very grateful for the opening up that's been happening recently. Yeah. But sometimes I'll sit and think about even the regret of not finding my voice earlier. Sure. Yeah. Whereas I sometimes I'll have these sort of like fantasies, I guess you could say, in my mind of being a kid and just being direct with my parents about what I needed. Yeah. I just didn't know how back then. I wasn't taught. I don't even think I thought it was okay to be that direct. I kind of took after my dad with, what do they say? Beating around the bush about things. Right. So yeah, there's regret there, and it's bittersweet. Because like I said, on one hand, there's gratefulness about, we're all getting more comfortable sharing and opening up to each other now, and it's beautiful. But I'm like, when you think of the lifetime, we only have so much time here on this earth, and none of us know when we're going to go. Like, when's going to be that last time that we see someone or be able to talk to them and share or even listen. Right. And so it's very precious and fragile, but yeah, there's definitely regret there. Did I answer the question right? Was there another part to it?
There, Jen, you're answering it wonderfully. So it
Okay.
just he wanted you to give examples of regret for not saying what we think and feel, and just talk about it a little
Yeah.
bit, which is exactly what you did, and it was wonderful in my opinion.
Cool. Thank you.
I mean, you started us out with a bang. That was very, very heartfelt, and I know. I mean, I've been around to hear you talk about that kind of regret, and especially with your family. And I'm glad they are opening up. But yeah, I mean, I've had some of that too, Jen. Regret for not saying what we think and feel. I was thinking before you answered. Mostly for me, the first thing that popped in my head was because I was so I was in fear of rejection, and that is one of the questions that I would often not say something. Now, I don't have regret now because everything worked out so much better than any other possible imagination that I had back then of meeting some girl, or whatever. But it happened to me all the time. I'd be out somewhere, I'd see some cute girl, and she might have looked over at me or whatever and smiled, and I never said anything. Never. I
Yeah.
never took the risk. And then afterwards, of course, I was beating myself up, just saying, "Well, you're so stupid. Why didn't you?" I mean, yeah, maybe she doesn't like you or whatever, but you're never gonna know unless you try. I mean, I had these voices in my head saying that. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying never, but mostly not ever. I
Yeah.
mean, it was a little different if someone introduced someone to me that was different. It wasn't that I couldn't have a conversation with a woman or another person. That wasn't the issue. The issue was me starting it up if I thought
Yeah.
someone was cute. So there's that. It's, but certainly I didn't have a problem speaking up to my family. It's a little bit different for me. I got in trouble because I did speak up. I got in trouble because I would tell the truth openly to my mom and to my dad, and they didn't like it. It was rebellious. I'm standing up to them, and it got me into a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
But certainly in work situations, I regret not standing up for myself in that way. And then sometimes also when I didn't want to do something, but the people pleasing in me, I would agree to do something that I definitely didn't want to do. And a lot of times that did happen later on with family, as I've discussed, and trying to prove to them that I'm not who I felt they thought I was. And so I got myself into situations where I agreed to do something that I didn't have any desire to do
Yeah.
all the time. Now, I don't carry any regret about any of that now. But like Jen, I in the past I used to think I wish I'd learned this sooner, and I think it's got to be a pretty common thing for people to feel who
Yeah.
have changed something momentous in their life, and they're a different person now, and they think like you did, Jen, thinking back to when they were a child or a younger adult, when they had their whole life ahead of them, and how much different their life would have been had they learned such and such.
Yeah.
But the other part of me now, I think, and this is a whole nother broadcast probably, but I think things happen the way they're supposed to. And that may be blind optimism, or maybe that's not the right phrase, but I just think things happen the way they're supposed to. I mean, I wish, Jen, that you and I had met sooner.
Yeah.
And I do still think of that sometimes. But, it's just a fun thing to imagine. Like, what if we had met when we were much, much younger and we have more of life together? But then we've talked about this, and I've thought, well, we may not have liked each other back then. I mean, the versions of ourselves who met, we seem to be perfect for meeting at that time in our lives. I still think that if I went back in time and remembered everything, I would figure out a way. I would do what I needed to do to convince you to like me. But anyway, regret for not saying what we think and feel. I gave a couple of examples, and That's a great starting first question. Let's hear from Nez. Nez, regret for not saying what we think and feel. Have any stories?
I'm thinking of somebody that I knew a few years back and used to communicate with them quite frequently. And then things happen, drama happens, people switch sides, choose other people, it
Right,
happens.
right.
And this person, I now regret that I didn't say some things to the person that I should have said when I had the chance. I mean, they're still
Yeah.
alive. I'm sure if I wanted to go to some extent of finding the information, I could find a way to communicate. But for now, I've looked. I can't find their email. I'm not friends with them anywhere on social media, so that makes that. It kind of tells me that I I can't go there right now. Um,
Yeah.
but there's at least something that I wish I could say to them that I should have said, and it's really been weighing on me quite a bit lately. So I'm,
Yeah,
giving it to the Lord in prayer. Um,
sure, sure.
I love this person. Yeah,
Yeah,
they may talk to other people or deal with other people who don't care for me, and
yeah,
but
right.
um, but aside from those people, I still care about this guy and this person, and I wish I could have. I do. I've been wishing that a lot lately that I could just say, hey, for what it's worth, you don't have to talk to me, whatever, but just to get it off my shoulders, you know. But I know that if I give it to the Lord, then it's not going to be on my shoulders anymore. It's in my heart right now. Something I've
Yeah.
been thinking about.
All right. Well, thank you. That was wonderful, Nez. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Glenn, you're up last on this one. Regret for not saying what we think and feel. What's your story?
Gee, oh, as I said, I don't think about these in advance.
I
But
know that's
I'm
okay.
going to tag both of them together, and all that came to my head was the double-edged sword. What
Right.
happens? I've been in situations where you want to discuss things, you want to exhibit a degree of, uh, or you attempt a reconciliation, discuss a topic. Whatever's on the table, you want to go there. You want to
Yeah.
express what I'm thinking, and the
Right.
person says, "I don't want to talk about it."
Right.
So what do you do? Do you up the ante and start shouting and abuse, or do you walk away with your tail between your legs? This is one of these cases. I know. Sometimes you just can't do anything. You're between a total rock and a hard place
Yeah.
because you don't want to be an abuser. You don't want to be, shouting at the top of your voice with the intent that you're going to jam it down someone's throat.
Right.
But you want to have a say.
Mm.
I don't know what anyone else would do. I just sort of, I, what I regret in this case is that there was not possible to communicate with someone who doesn't want to communicate. But at
Right.
the end of the day, it's not really regret. It's really you have no control.
Right.
So I know. So I would just go away and bang my head through a wall.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, I don't know. I know that sounds a bit airy fairy, but it's incredibly frustrating and arduous.
Sure. Sure it
Yeah.
is.
I've got other things probably coming down for the other questions which I was thinking ahead, but
Yeah.
the
No problem.
double-edged sword of regret is huge.
Yeah, it is. I mean, within all these questions, I mean, you said it in the sentence above. It appears that regret can be a double-edged sword, and it is almost always, I think, and it can be very damaging, especially if you live in a place of regret. So I'm sure we'll dive more
Yeah,
into that in a
I
little
do
bit.
have one more actually. That is, um, while I was out gallivanting the world, my mum and dad were so kind. They took the task on of looking after Michael for a while, and in retrospect, I thought oh my goodness, I did that to them and they copped it. They must have been thinking
Yeah.
underneath, you know, if it wasn't their son, they would have told me to F off.
Yeah.
Like, but anyway, a circumstance happened where I had an idea of how to parent a child with Asperger's, and they had, and I asked them to sort of stick to the guidelines, but I remember one time they didn't, and I went over to my mum's because I found out about it, and I thought to myself, I'm going to have to deliberately lose this, you know, to make a point, do an Academy Award performance.
Right.
So I put on the hugest act, you know, tore strips off my mum. Oh my goodness, the thought of it. And I was just, but in the end, I actually lost it. I just, you know how you do, sometimes you lose it.
Yeah.
Like Love and Death, that show, where sometimes you're going to hit someone with an axe 40 times, but I didn't have an axe.
Oh,
The axe was my words.
Yeah.
So, and then I regret that because after, it was so inconsiderate to do that to my mum, and particularly, who had given her whole life to her kids, her grandkids. Oh man, that is. Oh, I mean, I just cringe at the thought of what I did.
Yeah.
But I couldn't take it back.
Right.
So I regret it. So yeah.
Okay.
It leaves a huge thing in your head, and hopefully
Yeah.
you can make sure you don't do it again.
Right. Learn
Which
from
I
our
did not
mistakes.
ever.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
thanks.
Thank you. So Glenn answered the next one, which we're going to get to in just a second. I did want to say hello to Nikki and Bottle Caps, who popped into the chat. And I want to read something everyone said. Everyone said, if someone doesn't want to talk out things, then there's a perspective of respect that the other person has a choice. Maybe they don't know how to. I mean, that's an excellent point. I think there are a lot of people that don't know how to, and I would say that, yeah, we want to be respectful of someone else if they say, I don't want to talk about this. But for me, it depends on the situation. It depends on who the person is and what relationship I have to them. You know, if Jen said, and she's never said this, she always wants to talk, which is wonderful. I think it's such a gift. But if I asked her a question and she said, I don't want to talk about it, I would assume, I feel like I would assume that meant just right then. And I would totally respect that. But we're very both big proponents of talking through things before it festers. And I think that's so important. But you make a good point, everyone, that there are people that may not know how to go about doing that. But in that case, I would try to help them. You know, I might try to draw it out of them a little bit. Maybe not right in the moment, but at some point, circle back to the topic and say, hey, I've been thinking about this conversation that we didn't have, and you didn't want to talk about it. Well, how about now? Because I'm really wanting to hear what you have to say. You know, something like that. But anyway, thank you for your perspective, everyone. Appreciate that. I want to say hello to my friend John Dons from California. He just popped in the chat, and it's wonderful to have you here. I'm glad that you stopped by, taking time out of your busy Sunday to be in the chat. So everyone say hello to my friend John if you have a moment. All right. Okay, so the Glenn already answered the second question. So the second question in this grouping is maybe that's what Glenn intended for these groupings of questions to, you know, kind of, you know, answer both of them. I tend to go question by question, but we can moving forward, I'll read both questions, and if you
Perhaps they were meant to be for people if people felt inclined to one or the other. So together was the intention.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. All right. So the second question that goes with the one we just asked, regret for not saying what we think and feel, is regret for saying what we think and feel in a harsh and hurtful manner. and I'll go first. Okay, so I shared that I didn't have any problem standing up to my parents and saying what I think and feel. But sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes I definitely did it in a harsh and hurtful manner. I felt like they were playing dirty with guilt and shamey comments, and they're always on my back. And so I did the same thing when I was younger. I wasn't putting up with it, and I said things that I regretted, after the fact, because I very much am a thinker. And when I say things in the moment, then I can't help but ruminate. That's Jen's word she likes to use. Ruminate about it afterwards. And then I'm like, well, why did you say that? Because generally in the heat of the moment, for me, that's not the way what I said was true. I stand by what I said. What I said was how I felt. But the way I said it, it could have been done in a more mature manner and not hurtful. So yeah, I had this a lot, when I was younger. I did learn. I did learn to say what I think and feel, but not to do it in a hurtful manner. Calm, collected, still get my point across, but to make sure it's not hurtful. And that's where I am now. If I need to tell someone how I think and feel, and Jen can attest to this, I feel like I've gotten a lot better at saying how I think and feel and not doing it in a harsh way or a hurtful manner. Now, I'm not saying, again, it goes back to the certainly more in the past than recently, thank God. But with traffic and someone cut me off, things like that, in the past, I would jump into this angry place and say things in a harsh and hurtful manner, but that's gotten a lot better too. So definitely struggled with it in the past, but I'm in a better place with it now. So that's good. Let's hear from Nez, backwards order. Nez, do you ever have regret for saying what we think and feel in a harsh and hurtful manner?
Sticking with this particular person that I've had in mind, my regret was for not just saying something, but putting action to it. Um, I had foolishly confided in a mutual, what I thought was friend at the
Oh,
time,
great.
and that totally backfired.
Yeah.
I was acting out of concern, genuine concern, wasn't trying to harm the person that I'm focusing on,
Right.
but it was just not the right thing to do.
Right.
And give me some credit for at least thinking I had another friend I could, talk about and share
Right.
something with, and that
Sure.
was my mistake. But
Yeah.
my other mistake was even going there and saying and doing that in the first place.
Right.
So yeah, that's probably, it still gnaws at me. It still
Yeah.
bothers me.
I understand. I mean, these things can gnaw at you, uh, and it's not a fun feeling to have that constant gnawing in the back of your mind or in the front of your mind. Who knows, depending on what the situation is. Yeah, and I've done that too, Nez. Not that that'll make you feel any better, but I've done that. Go to someone else and talk about a mutual friend. Gosh, I've got some stories about that where that backfired on me as well. It's never never a good idea, I don't think. Jen, regret for saying what we think and feel in a harsh and hurtful manner. You've never struggled with this, have you?
Maybe not as much as some. I don't have the balls to do that.
Yeah.
But I have. I just tend to, keep that on the inside of my head, or I'll share with you. This is what I
Right.
want to say.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But I have, and it's a horrible feeling. I think there have been times where I felt a zing of, there,
Satisfaction. Yeah.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
But in behind it is a tidal wave of regret.
Yeah.
I never want to be ugly, or even if it's deserved, even if what it was said to me or done to me was worse, it still doesn't like even things out at all. It just
No.
feels gross to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm trying to think of a specific time. Oh, it went really quiet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Just being respectful.
Oh, thanks. Gosh, I can't think of one right now, but
Okay.
if I think of it, I'll share.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jen. Bottle Cap says, I always count to 10 before I say something inappropriate. And then everyone says, does that work? I don't know if it works. I don't do the counting thing. I just have taught myself to keep my mouth shut before I do say anything inappropriate. It's saved me a lot of trouble doing it that way.
Yeah.
Glenn, you already answered. Okay, so we've all answered this one. All right, so on for the rest of these double questions that are together, I'll read them both, and then you guys can answer however you like, and you can address both of them or one of them, whatever you want to do. So the next group or couple is regret for not enacting out what we think and feel, regret for acting out what we think and feel in a harsh and hurtful manner. Nez, regret for not enacting out what we think and feel, regret for acting out what we think and feel, but in a harsh and hurtful manner.
It just takes me back to just what I was just talking about. I really have the regret for saying what I said to the person that I said it to, and sharing what I shared. I really wish I wouldn't have done that. Not just because it was wrong, but it was something uh, in the heat of the moment. I didn't really take the time to, and I wasn't being angry or coming down with condemnation or insult towards the person I was referring to. It was, again, I was surprised by something, and so I thought that, hey, let's ask another friend about this, and it just it just totally completely backfired. Yeah. So
Gotcha. All right. Thank you, Ness. Nikki says in the chat, I've been ruminating. There's that word again, ruminating all day. I don't know if it's because it's my birthday, which is usually a hard day for me. Well, happy birthday, Nikki.
Oh, happy birthday.
She says, hurt my bestie's feelings this morning, and I still feel bad. And then she says, didn't mean to hurt his feelings. I don't understand my own feelings most of the time. Some conscious I'm trying to learn. Same conscious I'm trying to learn. Yeah, Nikki, that's horrible. Hurting anyone's feelings, especially someone you care about. I definitely understand why you would still feel bad. Yeah, I get it. But happy birthday to you. I hope you are having a good day, and hopefully this will get better. I'd always say discussing it is the best move. Make you feel better, and if his feelings are hurt, then maybe that'll make him feel better too. Just a suggestion, but you didn't ask me for a suggestion, so there it is. But at least I didn't say it in a harsh and hurtful manner. I said what I thought and felt, but anyway. Okay, we'll hear from Glenn on this one. Regret for not enacting what we think and feel, regret for acting out what we think and feel in a harsh and hurtful manner.
Yeah, once again, I'll join those together. Jeez, I've stuffed up. I've made some poor decisions in my life.
Yeah.
My brother and I were in a business with someone who was incredibly deceptive and ripped us off. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
It was it was a decent amount of money, but not gonna wreck your life, sort of thing. So
Right.
I can remember sitting we sued him, but I remember sitting out in the solicitor's office. I think you call it lawyers, don't you?
Yeah.
Do call it here that a little bit.
Lawyers.
It was going to go to court, and basically all I wanted to do was to take him down, hurt him. That was my sole focus. I didn't care what it cost. etc. But the truth of it was he had way more money than we did, and he just strung it out so that we couldn't afford it. So
Oh,
it one of those. Did a Donald Trump on me, us.
yeah,
Just took every legal avenue and basically
right.
force you into a corner where you got to say, "Oh, I can't do this anymore," sort of thing.
Wow.
Now, if I had thought of this, see, as soon as I introduced that revenge motive, I stuffed myself right up. Whereas if I'd been rational, I would have, I would have just said, "Look, karma will, he'll get paid out down the line. Just forget it. Walk off, learn from it, and just let it go." That's like
Yeah,
similar sort of thing that happens in divorces where they become incredibly acrimonious. I went through one of those,
yeah,
and you know what? I would have been better. I regret going through even the legal system. I would have been better off saying, "Here, take everything,"
right.
and I would have been way better off. I
Yeah,
wouldn't have had the emotional distress. I wouldn't have had all the recrimination, the hurt, oh
right.
man, everything that goes with all this sort of situation. And I would have just got on with my life. But instead of letting out something like this consume you,
Right.
no, you've just got to take that crap out of it. Thinking logically in emotional situations is difficult. That's for sure. And I think it was just Conscious Evolution said something about that in the
Yeah.
chat. It is difficult because you've got so much being thrown around, and it's so emotive that it's difficult to make a decision. But gee, I regret just even bothering. I
Yeah.
would have been, So there you go. That's my answer.
Thank you, Glenn. I
Another
appreciate that.
stuff up on the chalkboard.
Well, we all have them, right? We all have stuff ups for sure. I just want to share. Dana said in the chat, "I'm not denying what I believe. I'm just staying out of my emotional body, so there's no preconceived notions and looking at it through the eyes of the one God." And then he says, "I'm not perfect by no means, and constantly learning. And being here in the chat helps me to learn greatly too." Well, thank you, Dana. And I definitely understand. I don't know what that's about, what you're saying, but I do understand uh, being reluctant to share things or staying out of your emotions or choosing to do that. Um, but uh, you're as you know, you're very welcome to share whatever you believe here. There's no one going to be judgmental. I'm sure that's not about us here in the chat, but I'm just saying, I just always want you to know that regardless of what people's preconceived notions are about what you believe, True Story Live, we've always wanted to be a safe place, and it's gotten a lot safer. I've gone through some real changes, and it has helped me to um, more recently, more than in the past, be accepting of everything that someone else believes, and it be okay. And it's I see it as a real maturing on my part, and now I see things so much differently. I wish other people could learn to do that too. So I'm just saying you're in a safe place here to share and be emotional, whatever you want to do. And I think you know that. So anyway, all right. So I'll answer this one. Um, so I've told the story before, but it's been a long time. But this part, regret not. Wait a minute. Nope. Hold on. Regret for not enacting out what we think and feel. Um, not enacting. Yeah, I've had that too. Very much like things that I've said. I have regretted not taking action. Sometimes passing someone on the side of the road. A lot of times I've stopped and helped, but I've heard so many stories about Good Samaritans who end up getting hurt themselves. So sometimes I've become more reluctant. I always want to try to help people, but then if I don't help, if I don't stop, if I don't ask them if they're okay, is there anything I can do, then I always have a regret about it. But like it depends on the situation, but just driving by the side of the road, 9 times out of 10, I'll pull over and ask. But it's many other areas too. Just regretting, not see. So this is about feelings. That's not really a feel. Well, I guess it is about a feeling because there's regret about not doing what I think and feel is the right thing. So I guess that's okay. But yeah, that's just a short example. Now, the next part, regret for acting out what we think and feel in a harsh and hurtful manner. Yeah, I've had a lot of that. The one story that I've told before, that's what I was getting to, is when I had a friend that sold my, well, he said he sold my DX7 keyboard. I was trying to get money to go to Michigan. And I was really, really, really angry. And I let another mutual friend talk me into going into his house while he wasn't there and taking his TV and VCR and pawning it for some cash so I could make it to Michigan. And first of all, I didn't even make the cash that I needed to go. Got really screwed on that. And the most hurtful thing, I believe it was harsh and it was hurtful. And the TV and VCR had been given to him by his dad, who had died. And I just really, I mean, especially after the thought, as I said, I process things and think about things, and I regret it before I even did it. I really did. And that caused more trouble for me. That one little thing that I did, not little thing, let me rephrase. That one horrible thing that I did followed me around for a long time, and it ruined the friendship for a while between me and someone I thought was, at least back then, I thought was a real friend. And there was threats about the police getting involved, and it just was all around just a horrible, stupid decision that I made. And I learned from that. I haven't done anything that bad since then, before or since. But one of the reasons why I think about things before I do them, both what I say and also what I do before I do them. I'm not saying I always do, but I try to for sure. But that's definitely happened. All right. Jen, did I ask you yet? I don't think I did.
No.
Regret for not enacting out what we think and feel, and then regret for acting out what we think and feel in a harsh and hurtful manner.
Yeah, I definitely have a lot more regret on the first part.
Right.
I'm having a really hard time thinking of a story to share with you guys. Like the one thing I think I might have mentioned it last week about the comment I made to my brother when he was listening to the Black Eyed Peas. I was just such a jerk about it, like, and just rude. And I regretted that. I know I've done a lot of things. I'm just having a hard time thinking of something for the second part, acting out and aggression. I do have one story. There was a guy that I had hired to do some vinyl sign work, like lettering for my antique store that I had. And there was like some miscommunication, and there were some things that the guy did where his name was Jason, actually. And I kind of went off on him. I don't even remember what I said, but he called me out on it. It was like one of the first times that I kind of let loose with my anger. And he just, I don't remember, I could probably find the emails that we were sending back and forth, but we got on the phone. And I know at the time I had a really bad habit of getting the brunt of my ex's anger and then sort of like having his anger overflow out of me. Now, some of it was mine. Yeah. But my ex really did want me to be someone who was very angry and yelled at people because he felt like being yelly and scary would get people to do what he wanted, and I just was never that kind of person.
Right.
But this one particular time, I was under a lot of stress. We had just moved to a new store. A lot of things were going wrong and just not coming together the way we had hoped.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, he called me out on it and was like, there's no need for that. And, he didn't appreciate it. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
It's not going to help the situation.
Right. No doubt.
But yeah, I definitely have more regret on not, how was the first part worded?
Regret for
Regret for
not
not,
enacting out what we think and feel. Yeah, not
yeah,
enacting out. And then the second part is regret for acting out what we think and feel, but it's in a harsh and hurtful manner.
yeah, yeah. The first part, it's not so much regret of not getting angry and like lashing out angrily at people. It's more of just sharing, and saying, hey, that hurt my feelings.
Right.
I've had more issues with that than the latter.
Right.
So
Wow. Okay. All right. All right. We're moving through these. Let's see. Let me check the chat. And it looks like we have Leela Veg Kitchen in the chat. So thank you, Leela, for joining us. I think that's probably the name part, unless your name is Veg Kitchen, which probably is not the case. So either way, welcome. We're glad that you're here. All right. So the next grouping is regret for not doing more due to fear of rejection, ridicule, or disappointment. Regret for shifting your fear or rejection, ridicule, or disappointment onto others. Regret for not doing more due to fear of rejection, ridicule, or disappointment. Regret for shifting your fear, rejection, ridicule, or disappointment on others. And I'll go first on this one because this is a great one. Okay, the first part, regret for not doing more due to fear of rejection, ridicule, and disappointment. Wow. I mean, the earlier in answering a question, I talked about, girls and not talking to them and stuff. So I kind of said a little bit about this, but I've done it with other things too. I've done it with writing. I mean, I've been a writer since far back as I can remember. When I was really young, I used to write. My sister Shannon loved ghost stories. And a lot of times I just make them up off the top of my head. But at some point I started writing them down, and I would read them to her at night when we were going to sleep, before we went to sleep. And she loved them. Now, I don't know if anyone else would have loved them, but I loved doing it. I loved writing, and I write poetry and short stories, and I later did do something with it, and then I wrote plays when I was in college, and got a lot of success about that in local theater. And that's something that I did later in life after all the regret that I had. I mean, oh my gosh, there have been all these writing contests that I could have entered, and I didn't for that reason, fear of rejection, ridicule, or disappointment. So we got the girl thing, we got the writing thing. It's not everything. Like acting was something I was interested in. And it seems like the fear of rejection, ridicule, or disappointment would have kept me from doing that, but it didn't for some reason. I don't know why that was different. Or telling someone I have a lot of ideas, and I would not tell people my ideas for that reason. And I didn't like this about myself. And I think it's still something I struggle with to a certain extent. I'm still a writer, and I could write something and join some kind of contest or something. The other thing was Jen had encouraged me to start another YouTube channel where I'm reading books and stuff. And finally I did it. And once I did it, I was just so into it, and I was glad that I did it. But yeah, part of that was the fear of rejection, ridicule, or disappointment. Now, I must admit that there has been some disappointment that it hasn't taken off more, but everyone goes through that who starts a YouTube channel. Everyone does. And I had that. I didn't have that with starting True Story Live, because it wasn't even my idea. It was someone else's idea to do a channel, not the things that I do the channel about, but the idea to do a channel. And it wasn't on YouTube, it was on Blog Talk, but it was someone else came to me with the idea, and I jumped on it because it wasn't my idea. So I don't know why I didn't have that same fear of rejection. I don't know what causes that. Because, especially with the girl thing, it's not based on having been rejected or ridiculed or disappointed. So it's always been there, but it's fear when there's nothing that caused the fear to begin with. So, I mean, that's an interesting thing. We'd probably do another broadcast just about that one. But yeah, that's happened a lot. So the second part, regret for shifting your fear of rejection, ridicule, or disappointment on others. I haven't done that a lot. I've pretty much kept my those sorts of things to myself. I can't think of a time when I did that, shifted that onto someone else. Not really a open ridiculer, and I don't want other people to share the same rejection I feel or disappointment I feel. So I can't really cop to that one. So I'll pass it on to someone else here. Let's hear from Glenn on this, and then we'll hear from the ladies.
Sure. Yeah, I've done both of these. Not what I would say in a terrible way, but I've done it nonetheless. And I can think of an example after your mum and I played out a bit. I went and I thought, oh, shivers, I need to go and get some self-help books, work out what the hell's going on in my head. Right. So I did. I went and bought some. I think they might have been a bit new age, but whatever. I know how much you all love new age stuff. I don't really even know what it is, but I said it anyway. So, and there was a few chapters in that I found incredibly relevant, and you'll see there is a punchline. And the first one: take responsibility for your part in any dispute or situation you have with people where there's discontent. Own up. It can never be just one person's fault, or there's always two to tango. And then the other one was write down all those people that you hold in an angry place, or you feel hurt by them, or anything that you're living with that's digging you up. And they said, put it all down on a piece of paper, and then now go and fix it so you don't carry any regrets about any of this with you. So I thought, oh gee, that's a bit tough. Yeah. I don't even like these people. That means I've got to get on the phone or whatever, or there's no email in those days or whatever. Get on the phone, and I've got to take the first step, and I've got to learn to initiate reconciliation. And boy, I did it, but my goodness, it was tough. But it worked. It worked way, way better than I could have ever imagined. It didn't necessarily mean that was all pally and buddy-like, but it did come to an understanding that somebody in the background is, what are you, tipping nuts out of a container or something?
Yeah.
Oh, that's me. Sorry. I thought it was muted.
Oh, no. No.
Good one.
It's my shake. Sorry about that.
Shake.
That's the sound of your brain reconciling with people.
What was it? You got what's in your head, have you? Anyway, you know what it did? It removed the regrets. It did. It absolutely worked. Even if you had to eat a bit of humble pie to get rid of it, the results amazed me beyond anything that I could have even imagined. At least there was equilibrium, whereas before there was hurt. So yeah, you can always take steps if you want to. That's the moral of you. Even if you regret something, you can do something about it. Hopefully.
Yes, thank you for saying that, because that's the thing. I agree with that 100%. If you do say something and hurt someone's feelings, or push anything of your stuff on someone else, and the minute you realize it, I always feel better when I rectify it as much as possible. I mean, yeah, there are some people out there that are just going to be mad at you, and you have to wait until they calm down. And no, trying to rectify it helps, but it helps me if I know I've done something. And we've talked about this a little bit too. Like, even if you don't think, and I've worked on this with Jen. I really struggled when we met. I really struggled with people getting mad at me, and I didn't think I did anything wrong. And that was from my parents always blaming me for stuff, and a lot of times it wasn't even anything I did. I would get blamed for stuff other people did. Like I mentioned, my dad had a lot of tools, and if a tool was missing, who'd he come to? Me. Did you take my 9/8 wrench? Did you take my hammer? Did you whatever? And sometimes I had done it, when I was younger, but I learned not to touch his tools without permission because it just wasn't worth it. So he would be missing a tool, and he would blame me for it. So anyway, the point is, I got to the point where if I felt like I didn't do anything wrong, then I would really react to that when I was being accused of something. And that happened with Jen and I. And you don't mind me talking about this, do you, Jen?
No, not at all.
It was that I had talked in front of her parents about her moving to my area, and she hadn't discussed it with them. Now, I didn't know that, and I didn't do it to put her in a spot, but she was really upset with me about it. And when she brought it up, rather than me copping to it and taking responsibility and giving her some validation, which I know Glenn doesn't like, but in this way, the validation would have been me taking responsibility for it. That's validation. It doesn't have to be some hippy dippy, long drawn out thing, some wordy thing. It's just taking
Kind of
responsibility.
like empathy.
Right. And what I've learned from that, I mean, she was upset by it, and I processed. Like I said, I think about things after the fact, and I took a little drive and came back, and we talked about it. Learned a lot that day. I learned also that Jen doesn't like when a person goes away. I mean, I thought that giving her some time and giving myself some time, I didn't leave angry and peel out in the parking lot or anything. I just said, I'm going to go for a drive. And I learned that Jen doesn't like that. She would rather I stay and work it out, which I agree with 100%. It's never been a problem since then. But I had to work on this idea of if it's not something I feel that I did, of still making sure to validate the other person's feelings, because it's, to me now, it doesn't matter whether I did something intentionally or not. If a person's feelings are hurt, I feel like you need to, take some responsibility for it, have some empathy. It doesn't matter whether you did it intentionally or not. It matters that it happened. You might say something to someone and you don't intend to hurt their feelings, but their feelings are hurt. So what's more important, that you didn't intend to hurt someone's feelings and you hold on to that and clutch onto that and get defensive? Is that more important than how the person actually feels, or is the relationship more important? So I really appreciate that, Glenn. Talking about it, going to the person, working it out as much as you can is super, super important. Nez, regret for not doing more due to fear of rejection, ridicule, disappointment, or regret for shifting your fear of rejection, ridicule, or disappointment onto others?
Well, I'm going to be like Glenn and just take both of those at the same time.
Yeah.
The regret for shifting your fear of rejection, ridicule, or disappointment on others, I'm going to put N/A for not applicable. I really can't say in all of my soul searching and review of my past that that's been an ongoing problem. I have plenty of other issues and problems, but that one's not on my list. My problem is a fear of rejection, not doing more due to fear, rejection, ridicule, or disappointment. Sure. And I think maybe that's where I'm at right now in the case that I brought up, regarding that one person.
Right.
I'm afraid that if I go to the trouble to make a way to contact them, that is this going to mean that I'm being, creepy? Is that going to be perceived as being, inappropriate? And I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And my
Yeah.
sole purpose is to just say what I need to say, to apologize,
Right.
and I'm ready to walk away. I'm not looking
Right.
to rekindle anything. I'm not looking to reestablish anything. I mean, that'd be nice, but in reality, my desire is just to say what I need to say
Sure.
and give somebody the apology they deserve.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, really, is this something I need to pursue?
Right.
And so I'm trying not to act out of fear. I shouldn't be afraid. I'm not afraid to speak to the person. I'm
No.
afraid of going through, certain channels to, nothing illegal or, immoral or anything bad like that. But, if you take certain steps, you can find a way to contact somebody. It's not mission impossible. But,
Yeah.
do I go through the effort? And if so, am I doing it for the proper reasons?
Right.
Great
And
point.
so that's where I'm at right there.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nez. Appreciate that. Jen, you're up last this time on this one. Regret for
All
not doing
right.
more due to fear of rejection, ridicule, or disappointment. Regret for shifting your fear of rejection, ridicule, or disappointment on others.
I feel like I've operated more out of the first part my entire life.
Right.
I think not being direct with people and sharing feelings, even with my family, is my whole life. Fear of rejection. I had a couple of memories when I was younger, probably around like 6 or 7, where I got mixed messages. Yeah, and I'll just share real quick. I had me and my two older brothers all had hernias at the same time. And I was when we moved to New Jersey from Louisiana. And I'm not quite sure how that happened. I think it might have maybe my parents were having us move like too big of boxes or something. I don't know.
Right.
But my mom decided instead of having us all having surgery at different times, she thought, well, you know what? Let's just knock it out with one day. And we all had surgery the same day.
Wow.
And it was really, really painful. And it
Yeah.
was really scary, being a kid in a hospital and going in for
Sure.
surgery and being put under.
Sure.
So when I got out, I had dealt with separation anxiety with my mom, and
Yeah.
I have ideas of where that stemmed from. Part of it was from being prematurely born. I was 2 months early, and had to be in the NICU for a while, and I think part of it it was attached to that. But I remember my grandmother was in the room with me visiting, and I was fine. But my mom came in, and I just burst out crying. And it was out of relief. And you know how when you have those moments where you're really dealing with something and you're emotional, and you see that one friend or that one family member, and just like hearing their voice on the phone or seeing them or them even hugging you, it just like unleashes the dam of tears,
Yeah.
It was that kind of a thing. And she left the room. She saw me crying and she left. And so the message that I got was, if I cry, people are going to leave.
Yeah.
And so, and looking at this question, hold on, my phone went to sleep. I think that was kind of a huge foundational block of me
Yeah.
being afraid of abandonment,
Yes.
ridicule, rejection,
Mhm.
disappointing my parents. I'm this
Yeah.
crybaby. And I just sort of lived life out of that place, thinking
Yeah.
that opening up and sharing was going to make people,
Yeah.
ridicule me, or it was going to be disappointing to them, or just being rejected. And that was the last thing
Yeah.
I wanted, was to feel rejected. Now,
No.
the second part, regretting for shifting your fear of rejection, ridicule, or disappointment onto others. I don't think I've done a lot of this, but I wouldn't be surprised if I have, and I just haven't recognized it.
Oh.
Part of me is wondering, there's been times I haven't shared feelings with other people based on something that they have done because I've been afraid that they might have a fear of rejection, ridicule, or disappointment from me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So I guess in a way that is projection, like I'm
Sure.
projecting my own fear onto them.
Oh,
Like many
wow.
times especially when I'm angry, I've had trouble speaking up or setting a boundary because I've been afraid of making somebody else uncomfortable.
Not anymore.
Even though, well, this is more with other people other than
I
people I'm
know.
close to. That could be, I guess, considered shifting, but
That's genius to
yeah,
think of it like that.
I've dealt more with the first, I think, but some with the
Wow.
second as well.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me share.
Well, of course, I think that's genius for you to see a way to answer that, and that you may have done that with people pleasing and not wanting to disappoint other people. That's wow. I didn't even consider it from that point of view, Jen. So that's really
Yeah.
good.
Like saying no to people,
Right.
saying no to someone, something that they request that you do. It's like if I say no, are they going to feel rejected?
Yeah.
Are they going to be disappointed? And then that becomes my responsibility. So then
Yeah.
I have a hard time saying no. So I guess that could be in a way shifting my
Yeah.
own fears onto them.
It's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard to learn how to be able to say no and do it in a respectful manner, to stand by your no. And a lot of people don't even respect your no anyway. So what's the point? It can feel that way sometimes.
Yeah.
But I've learned to do it, and sometimes it's harder than others. I don't like to disappoint people, but I've learned to choose myself over other people in that sense. Doesn't mean I don't ever do things that I don't want to do, but if I really don't want to do it, or if I have a reason why not to, then I have to say no. As difficult as that is, and sometimes people don't like it. We had that situation not too long ago when my sister wanted us to house sit, which meant going over
Oh,
to
that
her
was
house.
so hard for me. Oh my
Right.
gosh.
It was so hard. That's so we were asked to go and stay at their house for 4 days. I just started my new job, and that was very important to me. And I was having trouble making the switch from us kind of staying up later and then having to get up at 6 a.m. And I'm going to do that at someone else's house. And also, one of the animals that they have is not a friendly dog, and they're not potty trained. It's an older dog. I don't know why that the dog decides to, go in the house, but she does. So
He,
he does, and I didn't want any part of that.
yeah.
I just didn't, and it
And
just
it was the
wasn't a good
last
time.
minute, and we felt like
It
they were in
was
a
last minute.
spot that, if we said no, they weren't going to be able to go on their trip. Like it just was. But, it makes me think about that phrase that someone said. It says, choose disappointment over resentment. And
Yeah,
that has been such a huge aha for me because there's been times that I've said yes out of duress or
yeah,
being afraid that they're going to feel rejected or let down or angry or
right,
whatever.
right,
But then I end up feeling resentful because I felt like my arm was twisted into saying
yeah,
yes when I really didn't want to do it.
right,
And having being in this place of being newly healed in this particular area, especially like healing, that was really difficult because I thought, oh my gosh, she's going to think that we don't love her, we don't care.
sure.
Um, that was really, really difficult. But
I'm
I
with you.
felt better afterwards knowing that I was honest,
Right,
saying that we couldn't do it, that we didn't want to.
right,
And instead of saying yes and then just being there the whole week and
yeah,
being pissed off about it,
yeah.
like, why did I do this to her?
Every time
You
you
know,
clean up poop and pee on the floor, you're thinking, "Wow, what
just
a
like
great
what punching
hero."
myself.
Right, right. Yeah, that was hard. That was a perfect example, because it's doesn't mean it's not, it doesn't mean it's always easy to say no, but sometimes you have to. And even if someone's disappointed. And to be completely honest, my sister was very disappointed. I think she felt rejected because, she asked us to do something and we said no. And we got through it, of course, and we didn't do it. And like Jen said, I felt better that we stood by our no. And then the hardest part was when Jen and I were talking about it, she says, don't you feel, because biblically speaking, we're supposed to do things for others, right? So she
Yeah.
brings that up. She says, isn't there a point in which we do things for other people, even if we don't want to? I was like, absolutely. I've done things for my sister and my family many, many times I didn't want to. So yes, there are situations in which to be kind and loving to a person that you might decide to do something, but that wasn't the time for me. That time was not the time. Anyway. All right. So everyone answered that question. The next pair is regret for not acting out of love. Oh my gosh. Regret for saying we are acting out of love when we are doing the opposite. Glenn, you're talking about Christianity here?
I'm speaking about anything you want to speak about. That's why the questions are open for you to interpret.
No, I know. I threw that out there. Maybe nobody caught it, but I hate to always be going first, but this one
I'll go first.
Okay.
Or do you want to go first? You can go ahead if you have thoughts on the brain.
I'm kidding. I do, but I won't forget it. Go ahead, Jen.
Gosh,
regret for not acting out of love, and the second part, regret for saying we are acting out of love when we're doing the opposite.
Oh man, this one gets complicated because I think there's been times that I have thought I was acting out of love, but I was actually acting out of fear, and it connects to that last question. Fear of rejection, especially, or abandonment. I'll just add that in there, to where you are painting it to yourself, kind of like to make it look better or feel better. It's like, for example, saying yes to something that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And you're couching it as love, but it's connected to fear. And then the second part, this made me think about something funny. Like, it's not really funny, but like I just recently had a family member mention to me out of the blue that she still had questions and concerns about Jason.
Yeah.
And we're already married, and he's part of the family, and it felt very weird and uncomfortable, but I handled it really well. And one of the things she had said was, because we love and care about you. But what had happened was she had ignored you the whole weekend that we were with the family, and it was very obvious and rude. And that's not loving. So it just made me think, you're saying that it's coming from a place of care and love, but he's my husband, he's my spouse, and that the way you were treating him wasn't loving at all. Like, you could still have your concerns and worries or questions and still treat him with respect and be kind. So that just popped up in my head when I read that part of the question, because it was like said to be done out of love.
Perfect example.
But it wasn't loving. I was like, what? So yeah, I was like, huh, okay.
Yeah.
So those are my answers.
Thank you, Jen.
Yeah.
Let's hear from Nez. Regret for not acting out of love, or regret for saying we are acting out of love when we are doing the opposite.
I'll do them both. I regret not acting out of love and saying that I was acting out of love.
Yeah.
I still stand by that. In my particular case, I did what I did because I loved the person. I cared about them as a friend, and I actually had some genuine concerns. There were things coming up that I didn't recognize. I hadn't known this person as long as some other people. And So that's, I guess it comes back to fear. I was afraid for the person. I was afraid, well, this happened. What does this mean?
Yeah.
And I should have just kept it to myself, kept it between me and the person involved. And I think it would have been more loving if I would have had more restraint and more wisdom at that time.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you, Nez. All right. Let's hear from Glenn. And I'm going to go last because I don't want to take up a lot of time, but I have a lot to say. So, Glenn, let's hear from you first, if you don't mind. Regret for not acting out of love. Regret for saying we are acting out of love when we are doing the opposite.
Generally, or pretty much all the time, it's never been my nature to not act out of love. Although sometimes you don't think about it and you do something. Like so in terms of this, I know even still today I have to sometimes think about how I'm going to act rather than knee jerk react. It's not counting to 10, but it's sort of running through my head. If I say that, where's that going to get me? And I've got a classic example, which was one that you said to me yesterday, which I was very gratified that you said, by the way, if I didn't make that clear. You said something like, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, if I got it wrong, but basically what I heard you say was, I'm sorry I spoke to you the way I did after my mum died.
Yeah.
And, when I got your response, I thought, that's what you said. I was thinking in my head, like, that's a bastard act. How you know nothing and you're shooting your mouth off.
Yeah.
Now, but I thought, now what if I start to get on my high horse about this? Where's that going to leave me? And I was thinking, well, the first thing it's going to do, it's going to mean that it's going to completely kill the prospect of any future communication.
True.
And what's the bigger picture here? The bigger picture is that we want to celebrate your mum's life if it's going to be possible.
Yeah.
So I thought, so thinking, where it's easy to do, harder to just take the time and say, well, what are the consequences? So I thought it was a good example. So
a perfect example, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I mean, that's exactly what happened. And if you had not taken the high road, then a lot of this wouldn't have ever happened. I may not have met Jen, I may have met her, but I think that you were instrumental in helping her realize that the relationship she was in was abusive. Maybe I would have done that if you hadn't been around, but the way that it panned out, I tried to stay out of it because I obviously was interested, and it would have been inappropriate, in my opinion. At least to me, it would have been inappropriate for me to talk to her about that at the time, for sure. And there's lots of other reasons. And the good news is that we did commiserate on my mother and celebrating my mother's life. And I believe we helped each other, whether we meant to or not, helped each other deal with her loss. We talked about her all the time, and we still do. And that has been very impactful in a positive way for me. Continues to be so. And some of the things that my mom said from letters that you shared with Jen were impactful for her, to help her understand that what she was in, she didn't want to make the same mistake my mom made. So the whole thing was very important in my life and Jen's life, and maybe in some ways in your life. And it all could have been ruined if you would have not acted out of love. And you also said last night in the chat that you understood, because my mom had just died. Doesn't mean that I have any right to act like a bastard. It was not good. And I don't know that I've ever apologized. We just kind of moved on from there, and I calmed calmed down. I got over it, but I don't know that I ever apologized for that. It just kind of popped up because you were talking about, Jen had asked the question, did you have any idea internally that Linda had died? My mother had died. And so Glenn was answering that question, and I read it, and it just popped into my head. I don't think it's ever too late to apologize. Glenn's not like sitting over there this whole time, years later, probably even thinking about that. But I thought about it. So anyway, I appreciate your answer, Glenn, and I appreciate that you reacted the way that you did, for sure. Want to say a quick hello to Scully's House of Thrillers. Scully's a friend of the channel, and he has his own channel where he reads to you, the author that reads to you, and he does broadcasts, live performances, reading out of certain books, and he's done Hook or Peter Pan rather, and Wizard of Oz. Well, did you do Wizard of Oz?
Wizard of Oz. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Wizard of Oz. And I was part of one, which I was delighted to do that. I played Scrooge.
Two. Because we did Jaws.
That's right. Sorry. I forgot about Jaws. Yeah.
That's
Jaws
fun.
and A Christmas Carol. And very fun time. So if you haven't subbed or listened to Scully's House of Thrillers, do yourself a favor and pay him a visit.
Check it out.
All right. So I'm going to talk about myself first before I start throwing stones at anyone else on this question. So I think that's fair. I've never liked this about myself when I caught myself acting out of love. I would pride myself in most instances of being someone that acts out of love, and that's what a believer should do. Someone that says they believe in Christ and follows what the Bible says, et cetera, in my opinion, they should be acting out of love. And I didn't always. To give an example, I was brought up that homosexuality was wrong, that God hates the act, not the person doing the act, but the act itself. And it was drilled into my head over and over and over again. And I've told the story before, and I'll be brief about this part. But in my late teens, early 20s, I didn't go drag anyone behind my truck on a chain, and I didn't hit anybody or beat anyone up, but I was very antagonistic towards homosexuals. And we had a neighbor, a family friend who was gay, and my mother spent a lot of time with him, and he did her hair. He was a hairdresser, and he did her hair all the time. So she spent a lot of time with him, and he came down with AIDS. And my mother, after he died, she was with him when he died and helped him go into death. And so my mother talked about her experience with that a lot. And she even wrote a lot of things down about her experience. And she had me put it on a tape. And so I'm reading this diary of my mother and recording my voice, reading her thoughts about this family friend who died of AIDS. And some of it was about his choice, his lifestyle choice. That's the way she put it. That's the way she put it at the time, that this was a choice, that even though he had AIDS, he still struggled with not being with men. And she was sharing that. And it's like someone stabbed me in the heart. Reading that out, hearing this love that my mom had for this person. Now, I never treated him unkindly, but there was this part of me that just was disdain. And frankly, and this is no excuse, but this is because of the religion that I have been a part of. Now, I had the choice to not do that, not follow that, but I didn't. And it still irks me when this question came up. This is what popped into my head. I'm not acting out of love. Because even if I didn't actively yell things at at these people, or, I didn't write, articles against them, and I didn't take any action. I still had this feeling inside me, and it's garbage, and it's ugly, and it's horrible. And thank God that my mom wrote that thing, because it really convicted me. And ever since then, I have not done that. I don't stay in this place of anger or disdain for people just because of their lifestyle or for any reason. So I have done this in the past. Now, the second part, regret for saying we are acting out of love when we were doing the same. Well, that's essentially what I was doing by claiming to be a Christian, claiming to be someone saved by the love of God through his son, and having this hatred, anger, disdain in my heart. It wasn't acting necessarily outward, but this is what it was. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, in my opinion. So I very much had regret about that. I was not acting out of love to have to carry that around with me. And I have, I had regret about that. And I don't have regret about it anymore, thankfully, because it was a long time ago. But this is something I remember whenever I start to think negative thoughts about another person. This memory comes into mind that I had done this and how horrible I felt about it. Okay, so there's that. This is one of the things that has irritated me about Christianity for a very, very long time. That I see people that claim to be Christians that are hateful, not just towards homosexuals, but anyone that doesn't believe exactly like they do. These arguments, and it happens all over the internet and in chat rooms all over the place. These people that claim to be Christians digging into other people that also are Christians, if they don't believe exactly like they believe. And it makes me sick. And I'm not going to have any part of it. So I have my own beliefs, which I would happily share with anyone that asked, but I am not going to call myself a Christian. I'm not going to be in league with these people that all these denominations and all these things that they say, they say they're acting out of love. Well, the reason I tell you you're going to hell is because I love you and God loves you. Well, God loves you and he's sending you to hell. Does that make sense? But if that's what ends up happening, that's God's choice. But for people to use fear and hatred as a way to make other people feel like crap, I'm not doing it anymore. So if I've ever done that, I'm repenting of that behavior. I have repented of that behavior, and I'm not doing it anymore. If I'm going to say that I love God and I love Christ and he loves me, I'm going to act out of love towards everyone, not just the people that deserve it in my mind, but to everyone. So that's really bothered me, and obviously it still bothers me. And I can't make anyone see that or accept that, but for me in my house, I'm going to serve the Lord, and I'm also going to act out of love like Christ said to. It was very important to him. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love God with everything. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love your enemies. Pray for those that persecute you. And that's important. All right. Thank you for indulging me. We'll move forward. Okay, so the next one, the last one of the pairings is regret for not acting today, regret for finding an excuse not to act today. And we'll start with Glenn on this one, and then we'll go the other way. Glenn, regret for not acting today, regret for finding an excuse not to act today.
Maybe a long time ago, way out of memory, but not now. I don't have any regrets. My whole mindset is very much like conscious evolution said. you should be thinking, well, maybe today's your last day on Earth, and it's true. Particularly as I'm getting older, so it could be gone any minute. So no regrets. Try to do what I can today.
Yeah.
Yeah, try not to put it off. So
Gotcha.
no regrets there. That's for sure. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Glenn. Sorry to interrupt this next question, but everyone asked me a question. I'm going to respond to it before we move forward. Everyone says, at Jason, why do you no longer hold regret about the feelings that you had about your family friend? What steps changed that for you? It's a great question, everyone. I appreciate that you would ask that. Well, first of all, I let go of that anger or that disdain that I had in me. I let it go. And for me, it wasn't necessarily a difficult thing. I don't know why it wasn't difficult, but what steps were taken was I read that diary that my mom had me put on a tape for her. I think she was going to do a book at some point, and she wanted to be able to hear it out loud. And I did it. I put it on a tape, and it took me, I don't know, I don't remember how long it took, but it was fairly long. And it was his whole story, basically, and how she came into his life when he was a teenager, and all the way up into his death. And it just wrecked me, honestly. So removing that, it changed the way I viewed it. And I just have never gone back to that. So hopefully that answers your question. If you want to follow up, be more than happy to be open about that.
So you're saying that because it was right in your face that it really forced you to think about how you were thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the other part was this is someone that I knew. It wasn't some guy out in the crowd somewhere that I'm having disdain for. This was someone that I grew up around. And it was someone that my mom cared about. And so I used to mow his yard. So he would ask me to mow his yard because he was so busy, and I would go mow his yard. So I was around him pretty frequently. So I remember that because I knew him, I didn't like have this open disdain. Like I said, I didn't say anything to him. I was kind to him, but that's not enough, in my opinion. It's not enough to act kind. That's part of your question from above. You're acting out of love when you're doing the opposite. But to me, it's the same. If you're acting out of love, but inside you have these feelings towards, maybe not towards him because you know him, but all this other group of people that you don't know, you're holding anger and resentment and hostility towards them. So yeah, it was in my face because I knew the guy. I saw him die. I wasn't in the room, but I saw him get sick from the disease. I saw him, lose a bunch of weight, and it was horrible. I mean, it was really, really not only just sad. It was horrific to watch this happen to a person that I knew. So it made it very real for me, and I never forgot it. Obviously, I remember all the details of how that felt and what that was like, and certainly what it was like for my mother. And it just changed me. And I'm grateful. I'm not grateful he died to make that happen, but I'm grateful that I dealt with that earlier in life and didn't carry that around with me. It's heavy stuff. All right. Where were we? Oh, regret for not acting today. Nez, regret for not acting today, regret for finding an excuse not to act today.
Yes to all the above. I think, and Glenn helped me out here, but I'm trying to put everything that I'm thinking and feeling about this particular situation into the sifter and trying to sift out the BS and the unnecessaries and get to what's the nitty gritty here. So that means saying no to the fear of rejection, ridicule, or disappointment. That can go right out the door. Um, not what is an excuse I have for not acting today? I honestly, I really don't have one. So that came out in the sifter as well. Again, my only question in my particular case is it, and I guess this goes back to fear of ridicule. Check me on this, but I don't want my action to be perceived as negative, creepy, stalky, toxic, whatever. I think that's probably the only thing that's holding me back from taking the steps I'd need to take to uh, make a way or find a way to contact this person to say what I need to say. Um,
Right.
and Glenn, if you can glean anything else from that, let me know. You're real good at that. Um, I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing for the right reasons and not just because I want to unburden myself. I
Nez, I think it's the fact that a person makes the effort is what is important. It's not about how how the other person responds. To find peace within yourself can only come from yourself, and that's based on how you are going to act.
if
It's if they heap shit on you, that's irrelevant to your peace.
I think if you detect a notion of maybe I shouldn't proceed because of this or that, feel free to let me know. Or if you got any input, please let me know.
Me personally, and I'm just generalising, if something is digging at me, I ask myself the other way, why shouldn't I do something? And I can honestly not find reasons pretty well ever why I shouldn't do anything.
Right.
It's your
That-
integrity that's really the critical point. Your integrity and your humility in the way you act is what counts. As I said, it's irrelevant. If the other person slangs you off, it doesn't matter. That, as I said, the peace comes from from you, not from them.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nez, and thank you, Glenn. Jen, you're up last on this one. Regret for not acting today. Regret for finding an excuse not to act today.
Both.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, I'm pulling up the question so I can stare at it for a second.
Okay.
Sometimes reading it is easier for me to wrap my mind around it than
Sure.
it being said to me. Forget for not acting today. I like what Glenn, I don't remember how Glenn said it, but he was talking about how we never know when we're going to go.
Right.
And when I really think about that, it just inspires me to love people, to
Yeah.
love on people.
Yeah.
And obviously in a genuine way,
Sure.
and to be grateful for them, whoever they might be, strangers that we see or people that we come in contact with.
Yep.
And I do regret having days that I feel like I've gone through the motions just to get through the day.
Mm-hmm.
And just wasn't being present, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Right.
Regret for finding an excuse not to act today. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I have this thing where I love to write people, and I can't tell you how many letters I've written to people that, or art I've done for people that I'm gonna send, and it just sits there. And I have a lot of regret. I'm like, put a damn stamp on it, Jen. Take it to the post office. It's great that I sat down and wrote out these things or painted a picture for somebody, but if it doesn't actually get to them,
right,
there's regret.
It's like
with
it
that
never
one.
happened, right?
Yeah, right. I'm like,
you
oh
don't actually
geez.
fall through. Yeah.
And then I'm wondering, oh my gosh, did I date this? Like, because they're going to get it and they'll be like, wow, she wrote this last year. It's still important. But I just took a while to send it to you. But thinking of something less funny, regret for finding an excuse not to act today. I think it's so important for us to tell the people that we love them.
Yeah.
And I probably would tell people that I loved them more, but sometimes I'm afraid they're going to think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, what you been smoking there today, Miss Jen? But who
Oh,
cares,
no.
right? Just tell
Who
them you
cares?
love them.
Yep.
I've gotten better at like texting my nieces and nephews just to let them know I'm thinking about
Yeah.
them and that I love them. Even my local nephews and nieces that live here.
Right.
Just let them know I'm thinking about them. I think that is a powerful thing.
I would agree.
But yeah, I've had regret on both of these. Oh goodness.
Gotcha. Thank you,
Yeah.
Jen. It's not a fun feeling.
No.
I've had, my dad used to say, well, he said a lot of things, but one of the things he used to say that used to really burn my butt was, make hay while the sun shines. And he would say that when he wanted me to work late or work on holidays and weekends. It was his go-to, make hay while the sun shines. And I have to admit that bothered me so much, and I was tired of hearing it, that I often didn't make hay while the sun shined. I didn't. Now I later in life, when I learned that the country has recessions, which slows things down and makes it difficult to find a job, I did wish that I had made more hay while the sun shined. That's for sure. But it took me a lot. I had to learn the lesson for myself. I obviously wasn't going to learn it from my dad saying it, because I know that his motives for saying it was to get me to stay late at night and working, when it was dark outside, when I wanted to do something else, other than that. But anyway, yeah, I've done this. And as far as finding excuses, I don't need an excuse to find an excuse. I used to come up with excuses for things all the time of not to do something today. Or now, if we're framing it in the idea of talking to people, I'm way better about that now. And I'm also better about not putting off something that I can do today. I'm not saying I'm perfect at that part, but as far as it deals with relationships, I'm much more likely to do something today and work it out rather than I am to wait until tomorrow or wait until it festers and it becomes a worse issue because of waiting. So that's my answer to that. All right. So we have a few more questions left, and I think we'll be able to, some of these are probably going to be a little bit quicker to get through. But we're trying to finish on time tonight because we haven't eaten yet. And yeah, I'm starting to get a little bit hungry. But anyway, the next part is not so easy, is it? After reading all the answers to those questions, not so easy. You're right, Glenn. I trust that thinking about some of the final questions for tonight will assist. So the first question is, which is more difficult, the decision to take a risk or the risk itself? Which is more difficult, the decision to take a risk or the risk itself? What do you think, Jen?
I think both, for me at least. Thinking about it gets my heart rate up, and then doing it does too.
It's the same. It's the same for you.
Pretty much the same for me.
Okay. Marisa, I know you're having some audio problems. Let's see if you can answer this one. Which is more difficult, the decision to take a risk or risk itself?
The decision to take the risk, in my case.
Okay.
I'm willing to go for it and say what I need to say. I'm not afraid to say that. I'm just just stepping off and jumping into the water to do it. That's
gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I would agree with Jen. I think both of them can be equally difficult, but then I agree with Marisa on that the decision to take the risk. I've been in that place of wanting to take a risk at something, and I just marinate in this undecisive nature of mine that I've had to work on. Again, much better about it now, but yeah, I would have to say that it has been in the past, both of them, but now it's more the decision to take a risk in the first place. And I'll just say real briefly that I probably wouldn't have been with Jen if I didn't take a risk. This is a person that has changed my life, and being in a relationship and being in a marriage with her, and it all could have been thwarted. I mean, the day that we were supposed to meet for the first time, I was thinking about not going. And gosh, I would still be beating myself up if I hadn't gone. And part of that was the fear of rejection, the fear of disappointment, and all of that stuff that was part of a earlier question. But fortunately, I didn't marinate very long, and Glenn was helpful to say, look, she's looking forward to meeting you, and you have to pick us up, because they had flown into Williamsburg, and they didn't have any way back to the Carolinas for sure. So there was a lot riding on that, but that's an example of deciding to take a risk that really, really panned off. And maybe taking risks doesn't always work out, but I feel much better at this stage in my life to go ahead and take a risk rather than missing an opportunity. We'll leave it like that. Glenn, which is more difficult, the decision to take a risk or the risk itself?
I'm in Nez's corner on this one. The decision's the toughest. I mean, for me, if I make the decision, I go do it, then I put it to the point, okay, I'll deal with the risk when I need to deal with it. Right now, I've taken the decision, but I don't have to do anything now. I just have to wait and let it unfold and deal with it.
Yeah.
It's a piece of cake, and it made me laugh when you said that about Jen, because I remember your mum told me about her friend that said, "You're going all the way to meet this guy in Australia. He might stuff you in the trunk and murder you."
Oh.
So I just thought of that. I thought, yeah. So she actually took a risk.
Wow.
Could have happened.
Wasn't really a risk, but that's how we thought, how people see things, isn't it?
Right. Exactly.
Crazy. Thanks.
Thank you, Glenn. Everyone, before we move on, next one, everyone says, so it's not so much in the decision of whether or not to take a risk or determining something is a risk to us. Generally speaking, it's about being able to objectively assess the situations for what they really are, how they affect ourselves and those around us, and setting to the task and moving forward with the reality of accountability to the decisions that we do make. Oh, very well said, everyone. Thank you for sharing that. All right, next question. What is it that stops us from taking risk? What stops us from going in, boots and all? I'll go first. I think it's fear of failure for me. That's it. I mean, I could probably think of other things that enter in, but that's the first thing that popped in my head. Fear of taking a risk and messing it up completely. And I had that, using that same example. I had in meeting Jen for the first time, there were all sorts of things in my mind that I could think of that could go wrong. All sorts of things. And it was wonderful and beautiful, and I'm glad that I did it. And there was only one thing that I did that could have screwed things up, but then I learned very quickly that it was all good. And that was that Jen and I were sitting on the back porch, and I didn't know how her imagination.
You're really going to tell the story?
just part of it. I'm not gonna tell what I said necessarily.
Oh, okay.
But
you can tell them. I don't care.
We were out on the back porch talking, and I had started to share a story of something that happened when I was in high school to someone I was close to that got shot by her boyfriend, her abusive boyfriend. And I didn't understand at the time Jen's imagination and how deep it goes. And she didn't like freak out or anything. She just kind of reacted like, oh, don't tell me that. I don't want to hear that, because I picture it in my mind. Which is, I've come to learn that's what she does. Like, she really gets into TV shows or stories, and it's almost like it's happening to her. And I love that. I think it's great. But on the first time that we met, probably not a great story to share in retrospect. And I thought I'd really stuffed it up. In fact, when I went to sleep in the guest room that night, I just like, oh, you stupid. You should have never mentioned that. Well, yeah, you upset her. And I thought the whole trip was wasted. And that's how you can get into your head and assume things that aren't reality. And then when I went downstairs for breakfast, she put her hand on my shoulder and smiling at me and stuff. And so I was like, breathed a sigh of relief that it must not have been that big a deal. She'd moved on from it, and I still kind of marinating and ruminating about it, and there was no need. So anyway, yeah, I think it's the fear of failure for me. What about you, Naz? What is it that stops us from taking risks? What stops us from going in boots and all?
Boots.
Right now, I'm trying to decide how much of it is fear and how much of it is just letting things lie. Just maybe there's wisdom in just letting an old sleeping dog lie, given this particular situation.
Yeah.
So I'm still weighing that. I'm not afraid to do it,
Right.
to actually say what I need to say, but do I actually go through to find the way to say it?
Yeah.
Is this something I need to do? Is this something that I just want to do? I guess is where I'm at.
Okay. Thank you.
And if it's on your mind, sometimes you're thinking, is it on my mind because God's putting it on my mind? You know, it's something that He wants me to do.
Exactly. And to add to that, it's been on my mind for a couple of weeks, and I've observed things in this person where they have reached out to other people, wanted to make amends with other people, and so I took that to be a positive sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Why wouldn't you?
So that's what's making it stick in my craw right now, I think.
Maybe they're in a better place.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But this person will still ignore me out in public. So that's where I'm at. I'm kind of doing the Austin Powers, trying to back up the golf cart back and forth to decide which way to go.
Oh my gosh. That scene is hilarious.
Wow, that's a nice visual.
That's exactly how I feel right now.
You're like, do I go? Maybe not now. I'm gonna pray about it.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
So there you go there.
All right. Thank you. Before I hear from Glenn, I'm going to read everyone's comment. Fear of being wrong, in all caps. Fear of being wrong and not willing to take accountability for the decision that we do make, regardless of what consequences that may bring to the outcome. So thank you for sharing that. Glenn, what about you? What is it that stops us from taking risks? What stops us from going in boots and all? Boots.
Yeah, it's the 4-letter F word, but not the one you usually use. It's the fear.
Fear.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I've got a story. I remember when you and Jen went off to talk, I said to Sandra, I wonder if Cripps is going to melt into a blob of protoplasm.
And he did.
Obviously. Did he melt, Jen? Did he melt?
I think he did.
His heart melted, but that was all right.
Sure did.
Thanks.
Thank you, Glenn. Appreciate that. All right, next one. In life, do we need to take a degree of risk for there to be no regrets? In life, do we need to take a degree of risk for there to be no regrets?
Absolutely.
Okay. We heard one country heard from. You want to fill it in, or is that good enough?
I think everything is a risk to some degree. But if you don't take the risk, the only guarantee is regret, I think.
Wow. You had to write that down. I love it. Thank you, Jen.
Because then you just don't know, you know?
Oh, yeah. Nez, in life, do we need to take a degree of risk for there to be no regrets?
Oh, absolutely. You can't make that omelet without breaking some eggs. You've got to learn, uh, like Kenny Rogers told us in The Gambler, you got to know when to hold them and you got to know when to fold them. We need
Sage.
discernment. For us soldiers of Christ, we need spiritual discernment. We need to know what we need to know is what our motives are, where our heart is, and why do we even want to do what we're thinking of doing. Because
Yeah.
not everything we want to do is something we should do, even if we want to do it.
Yeah. Thank you, Nez. Dana, the Conscious Evolution channel says, I would say for sure there are a lot of risks that I didn't take when I was younger and that I regret it, but I had to let it all go. I'm like you, Jason. I believe that a lot of stuff happens for a reason, so I can't have any regrets if that's true. All right. Thank you, Dana. I appreciate your comment. Thank you guys for making comments along with the questions. That's one of my favorite things.
Same.
Uh, did Glenn answer? Glenn did no. In life, do we need to take a degree of risk for there to be no regrets?
Yeah, I agree with you guys. If you do nothing, you end up getting nowhere.
Yeah.
So it's pretty straightforward, I think.
Yeah. And
But I think it's
lastly,
important to think about it. Each time you decide not to do something, it's good to reflect in that moment. Why am I not doing this?
agreed.
Is
Yeah.
it justified?
Yeah.
What's the real reason?
What's the real reason? That's important. And lastly, I agree with everyone else. So there's nothing I can add to that. I agree that there needs to be a little degree of risk. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. I do agree with that. All right. When taking risks, is it relevant to act from a place of humility rather than pride? Does the approach make a difference? I'll go first. Always. Does the approach make a difference? Always, 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 always. It's the same of whether you're saying your feelings and thoughts, sharing it with someone. The way that you do it to me means everything. So it's not going to be any different when taking risks for me. So when taking risks, is it relevant to act from a place of humility rather than pride? Pride is, we've talked about this before. I think Nez brought it up, if I remember correctly. But I've talked about it a lot too, maybe not on this broadcast, but the idea that biblically speaking, pride was actually the first sin. People say that it was Eve eating the apple, but it was before that. It was who we understand to be the enemy, Lucifer, of thinking that he could be like God. And it was his pride that was his downfall. Bibles were very big on pride, and it is a horrible thing. But not just the Bible, in life, this pride thing causes all kinds of other bad things that it leads to other things. So for me, whether taking risks or not, it is always relevant to act out of a place of humility rather than pride. Pride is a killer. I want no part of it. And I would be happy if I could extricate every little ounce of the negative kind of pride out of my life and not ever make decisions out of that. I'd be just fine. Also, to me, the approach makes a difference. How we approach something, our attitude toward the other person, our attitude in the relationship, how we handle things in that way mean everything as to the outcome every single time. What do you think, Glenn? When taking risks, is it relevant to act from a place of humility rather than pride? And does the approach make a difference?
Absolutely. I can illustrate this one. Sandra sort of shakes her head sometimes. I say when we used to travel a lot, we'd go somewhere, and if it was it was not ridiculously in some area that it would be crazy, but I'd say to her, look, I'm going to go out and explore this place, and I'm not taking a map.
Oh,
I'm just going to go out and do it. I've done this. I set myself the challenge of going out, getting myself lost, and then I have to find my way back to where I came from. But with the help of other people.
Right.
Now you can imagine if I went out with an arrogant attitude, and I'm asking someone that I have no idea even what the country's like to help me, they're going to get their backs up like any person will. But if I'm humble, people bend over backwards to help you.
Right.
The people in general are very willing if you treat them with respect.
Right.
And so I'm 100% on drop the pride, be humble. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I always managed to get back.
Oh yeah, well obviously, obviously you got
well,
back.
I'm here.
Well, you wouldn't be here.
But sometimes I've had to ask like 5-6 times to get back,
Right.
because sometimes people don't understand you when you're trying to speak English in a foreign language. But that's how it works.
Yeah. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
Everyone says entering any place of uncertainty is always worthy of humility, approaching all situations with the humility that one has not been in that place before. Respect for the wisdom it holds in learning. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for adding your thoughts there. Nez, when taking risks, is it relevant to act from a place of humility rather than pride? And does the approach make a difference?
Not only when taking risks, but in everyday life, it's important to come from a place of humility.
Right.
Absolutely. But especially with taking risks. You take a risk every day just by going out your door.
Yeah.
So definitely a place of humility.
Sure.
You don't know what's out there. You don't know what's going to come your way.
No.
But at least people who are followers of Jesus, they know that God has their back, and there's nothing that's going to come your way that God can't get you through.
Mhm.
But still, it doesn't mean you go out there and and run out there like a brazen maniac and try to take on the world by the horns every day.
Right.
But definitely yes, a place of humility is most appropriate.
Right. Perfect. Thank you, Nez. Jen, you're up last on this one. When taking risk, is it relevant to act from a place of humility rather than pride? And does the approach make a difference?
Oh, pride always works for me. I'm just kidding. Yeah, humility is a big, big deal. And what was the last part?
Does the approach make a difference? Is it relevant to act from a place of humility rather than pride? Does the approach make a difference?
Yeah, the approach, it makes a huge difference, because if you're coming out of the gate blaming and angry and prideful,
right,
you're going to get resistance, I think.
Sure.
And that might not be what you want, or maybe some people do, I think.
Some people
they're like, woohoo.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you come at it through humility, you're much more likely to get. It's disarming.
Yeah.
It's like Glenn. It helps not get the other person's back up.
Yeah.
As Glenn would say.
Thank you, Jen. I'm gonna while you're speaking, I'm gonna ask you this next question. I know you're getting dinner ready, which I appreciate. But let me ask you this next one. This is probably, in my opinion, these two last questions are probably the most important ones, at least to me. They're the ones that I relate to the most. So the first one: have you ever regretted not being your true self in a situation? And if so, what ongoing effect has that had upon you, Jen?
Yeah.
We were just talking about this. We were just talking about this today.
So I know me not being my true self with people it's been sort of a perpetual thing.
Yeah.
So every moment that I have chosen to stuff down my authenticity or who I truly am or my thoughts or feelings or whatever, it has been a disservice to me and has played into me doing it more and more, almost like an addict.
Yeah.
And it almost erased me. I just had no identity. It played into me not feeling like I didn't have an identity.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, if I think about it, which is kind of jarring, it makes me think that a lot of my relationships my entire life up until 5 years ago were inauthentic in a big way, because I was choosing not to be. I didn't feel like it was safe. It wasn't that I didn't want to,
Right.
but it was a disservice to myself, and I believe the people around me.
Right.
So,
Thank you,
because
Jen.
when you meet a person that's open and authentic, like I've met people in my life that have been very open, and it perpetuates the exact thing that they're presenting. You know, I've had friends that, through seeing them be authentic and open, it has helped me be the same.
There
And
you
I've
go.
really appreciated that.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Perfect answer. Okay, so the last answer, Jen, is do you, because it's tied to the one I just asked.
Okay.
Do you outwardly declare the quote real you end quote more than you did say 5 years ago?
Absolutely.
Today?
Absolutely.
And why? Why is this so?
Because it's peace and freedom. When you get a taste of that, being yourself and even being around people, and I think this is sort of a catalyst when you're around people that actually see you and accept you right where you are.
Yeah.
It is such an incredible, freeing thing. And the more you interact with these people, and for me, it was you and Glenn,
right.
It's like living in that freedom with those people. You don't want to go back to the old way. It's too much work. It's exhausting. It's depressing.
Yep.
And then when you start walking that path, it gets to the point like where Glenn is, where you're like, I love who I am and I love who God created me to be. And if people don't accept it, or if they don't want to, that's on them. And that's okay. I can accept them for not accepting me, but I'm okay.
Yeah. You're okay.
And I can continue to live in this freedom and feel peace and joy and gratefulness, and just keep being me.
Yeah. There's nothing like it, being your true self.
No, there's nothing like it.
Ness, have you ever regretted not being your true self in a situation? And if so, what ongoing effect has that had upon you? And then I'll ask you the last question.
I've been a lot more comfortable in my own skin and being who I am for several years now, but I can think farther back in time when I wasn't being true to who I am, how I was brought up to be. One of the things I think that came from me acting out of fear, not following who I was, who I am. I think the choices to get married when I did, which I mean that's something that happened, and it's always going to be like that. You know, I can't undo it.
Right.
And not pursuing art sooner in my academic studies.
Yeah.
That's something that there's many times I've been, if I only could have done this sooner.
Right.
If only I could have paid more attention to this and gotten this taken care of. If only I could have been okay with who I was back then. I wonder, would I have pursued art in school a lot quicker than what I did, because I didn't start out that way. I started out pursuing what I thought my family wanted me to do. And I can tell you right now, anybody who's listening and you're thinking about going back to school or going to school, please don't do what your family wants you to do.
Right.
Please do what you need to do and be who you are and hone the gifts and talents that you have.
It's good advice.
So, yeah,
because also you're the one that's going to pay for it, not your family. In most cases, that's probably true.
Exactly. But I own it. Those were choices that I made, and you know they're always going to be with me. But I don't have to let those choices dominate me or control me or in a negative way. But we can learn from them, and I certainly learned from mine.
Hope so. I hope we learn from our mistakes for sure.
I'm trying.
Nez, last question. Do you outwardly declare the quote real you end quote more today than you did say 5 years ago? And why is this so?
Absolutely. Because of certain things I've gone through on and off social media. I've learned that most critics and real life abusers, trolls, whatever you want to call them, most of them, for the most part, are just all talk
Yeah.
and their own opinions.
Right.
And it really doesn't have a bearing on me or my life at all.
Right.
And
Right. Right.
I've told people, when they've had struggles with difficult people, toxic people, reminding them that they can say whatever they're going to say. You're
Yeah.
still you, and you have the right to be you. And what the negative, toxic, abusive people have to say about you doesn't amount to jack squat.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
So I think what my experiences, particularly through social media over the last 5 years, I think I've come out the stronger and the wiser for it.
Sure.
Absolutely. I'm
Well,
okay with me. I'm not perfect. I never claimed to be perfect,
no.
but I'm happy with who I am in my own skin, with how I'm living life, and
Yes.
I'm okay. I'm okay with being imperfect and a work in progress.
Yep.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you. Glenn, have you ever regretted not being your true self in a situation? And if so, what ongoing effect has that had upon you?
Well, obviously, yes, I have regretted it. The ongoing is effect. The ongoing effect is that I'm trying not to do it anymore, and
Right.
it's not only the big things. I mean, I was just thinking of something I was in my head the other day when I was going to the shop. Sandra says, "Can you get this type? Can you see if you can get this type of yogurt, say, for example?"
Yeah.
And I totally forgot about it,
Yeah.
as would be pretty much me at times. And I was thinking on the way home, now what's easier? I can say I couldn't find it, or I can fess up
Yeah.
and say I forgot. See
Yeah.
how easy it is to not be your true self. It's easy
Yeah.
to say I couldn't find it and use an excuse. But so once you take excuses out of the situation,
Yeah.
only then can you be your true self.
Agreed.
So
That
yeah, it's
makes
the
me
little things count, eh?
that makes me think, is lying not being your true self?
Yes, well
Yeah.
that would have been lying if I said I checked and it wasn't there,
Yeah.
Yeah.
rather than said I forgot.
Yeah.
That's a lie. You're not truthful. It's not yourself.
No. I think it is a
Everybody
lie.
here is a
Yeah.
truthful person, as I see it. We're
Yeah.
here for the right reasons. We've all got integrity,
Yeah.
but little tiny things can be bigger
Yeah.
because it's easier.
It is easier. You have to fight against that easiness.
Yeah.
Um, Last question, Glenn. Do you outwardly declare the real you more today than you did, say, 5 years ago? And why is this so?
It quite surprises me to say, but yes, and quite significantly. Um, if I can relate it to TSL, like, I mean, sometimes Sandra says, "Why are you bothering doing that show? You spend time on it, yada yada yada." It's just, But of course I say, well, I'm going to do it because I think it's worthwhile. So
Yeah.
that's how it is. Anyway, but just thinking about it right now, just being exposed to the experiences of others, hearing of their loves, their hardships, and things like that really
Yeah.
does have an effect. It
Yep.
makes, and even doing the write-ups, it makes me think about things that years ago I wouldn't have even spent the time of day to think about because I think, well, they're not relevant to me.
Right.
So it sort of put things into my face that I never had to consider.
Yeah.
But just having consider, I think considering even what's put up in the chat, that has
Yeah.
a big effect on people if you think about it.
Sure.
There's a lot of stuff there that's so relevant, and it can be just a one-off comment, and sometimes I'll take it, and it'll sit in my head for days.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, surprisingly, yeah, a
Yeah.
lot. There you go. That's my answer.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Glenn. I appreciate that. All right, I'm last to answer, and the first one: have you ever regretted not being your true self in a situation? If so, what ongoing effect has that had upon you? My answer is very similar to Jen's. Yes, I have done that. I have denied my true self in many, many ways for a very long time. And it actually has been probably since 2017 or so that I really started seeing this. I had the time. Taking care of my mom's mom gave me a lot of time to think and reflect on my life and lots of other things. And when I did that, I realized that in less ways than earlier in my life, but I was not my true self. And ever since I realized that, I have worked on it and worked on it and worked on it. And it has, that has had an ongoing effect that I will carry to my grave. And it'll be positive instead of negative, because to me, there's no point in being a plastic person or denying your true self. It serves no purpose, and it's only negative. You're just denying yourself. And to follow up what Jesus said, love God with everything, love your neighbor as yourself. There's that element that people overlook about loving yourself. Well, how can you love yourself if you're not acting who God made you? Your true self. It's all covered up with all this garbage. And we've talked about that before, so I don't need to get into that. But yes, I've done it. I have regretted it, but I'm not any longer living in regret. I'm every day choosing to uncover the things that have covered my true self up, and I'm choosing to live in that. And do you outwardly declare the real you more today than you did 5 years ago? Absolutely. Every day I wake up and I choose to not deny who I really am. And I wouldn't suggest that anyone does that. Why is this so? A lot of work. A lot of work has gone into it, and because I choose to be who I really am. And Jen has helped a lot of that helped me with a lot of that, and watching her do it has helped me, has encouraged me. Glenn has helped. People in the chat have helped. Like Glenn said, with your comments, I've taken them to heart and thought about them after the fact as well. Nez has been a part of that. Creatively, encouraging Jen to do her art, encourages me to work on my own art things, like writing and doing Dr. Sleep, reading stories. So we should all, in my opinion, we should all work on being the real you, because it doesn't just affect you. When you're the real you, it affects everyone around you. They see that, they can sense that, and maybe they're struggling with this too, and it will help them be the real them as well. So there's that. Thank you guys for all your answers, and everyone in the chat who took the time to answer. Hello to Christ is the Truth. Latecomers are welcome. We're glad that you're here. So thank you for stopping in. We appreciate that. All right. So the last paragraph in Glenn's write-up says, thanks for participating. A closing thought. Like so many things in life, perhaps our approach to risk is just another declaration of who we are in this moment. Regrets, painful as they may be, offer another learning experience. We have another choice to make. So many. And then a quote: play hard, forgive quickly, apologize when you are wrong, take chances, and have no regrets. Paulo Coelho, our constant friend of the quotes. All right. Well, thank you guys for sticking around a little later tonight. I'm going to go eat with my wife and enjoy the rest of our night together. But thank you for being a part of our Sunday night, Sunday, and being a part of tonight's broadcast. Thank you, Glenn, for putting the time and effort into writing a wonderful write-up that could not be squeezed into 2 hours. it just couldn't. It needed a little bit more time to get through all the questions and not speed through. So thank you. I'll say goodnight to everyone, and I'll pass it along to Jen. Jen, please take a minute to say goodbye to the peoples.
All right. Excuse me. Good night, peoples. Thank you so much for coming to hang out with us tonight. Yes, Glenn, I'll second that. It was a beautiful write-up. Wonderful, thought-provoking questions. And I've always been intrigued by regret as a whole, and it's multifaceted, and you really pulled it apart. I appreciate that. Thank you to everybody in the chat for being a part of the show, listening in, and just discussing it with us in the chat box. We appreciate that, guys. Have a great week, and for those in the U.S., happy Memorial Day.
Yep.
Off to you, Glenzo.
Yeah, Glenn, take a minute to say goodbye to the peoples, please.
I'll say goodnight. I started eating cereal because I hadn't finished my breakfast. And
Okay.
It's after 12. It's after midday.
Oh
Right.
my goodness.
Yeah. It's all right. It's all good. Enjoy your week, everybody. I'm not sure where I'll be next week, but I'll let Cripson, etc., know about that.
Yeah, there might be a break. There
come
may
see the
not.
kids.
Yeah, there might be a break in the series. There may not be, but we'll figure it out. We'll talk about it, and but we'll be back here next Sunday. So thank you for that. 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, Glenn. All right. Last but certainly not least, Nez, if you could close us out and say goodbye to the peoples for us.
All right. Thank you so much. Glenn, fantastic write-up. And I'm going to credit the good Lord for this particular topic coming up tonight. It was information I needed to hear, words of encouragement, words of wisdom, all in a timely fashion. So thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Glenn. Good writer. There's a little extra validation to go with your cereal. Because I love you. And thank you, everybody, for coming to lurk or listen. Thank you to everybody who catches the replay. Please take a moment to share the stream out on your social media if you feel the need to do so. We would appreciate it. And as always, if you have topics or questions or comments about what we're talking about here or what you'd like to see us talk about here, please reach out and one of us will reach back out to you. Looking forward to next week, and I hope everybody has a safe holiday weekend here in the States anyway. And I can't wait to jump into the conversation next Sunday. And I hope you'll all be here, right here on True Story Live, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. God bless, and good night.